Hello there, welcome to the channel. Before we get started, I need to address an error in my previous video to this one. It's from Battlestar Galactica video, and I kept referencing, mostly because I was tired, that the algae planet and New Caprica were the same world, and I'm aware that I did this only after I uploaded the video. It's annoying. So, to clear that up, they're not the same planet, they were two separate planets. New Caprica first, then the algae planet. I just wanted to get that out there that, oops, I did that. Now back to this video, and this video is a Star Trek, not Battlestar video, and we're looking at the Voyager 6 space probe, part of the Voyager probe missions that were started in the 20th century to chart the various different planets within the Sol system. An incredibly successful range of missions of unmanned space probes launched by the National Aeronautic Space Administration, otherwise known as NASA. Voyager 6 would accomplish its mission very successfully and then venture out into the great beyond and the great dark beyond the rim of the solar system. So, let's get into the story of Voyager 6 and what became of it. Okay, so as always, sticking to the canonical information, Voyager 6 was launched by NASA in the year 1999. Of course, this was the sixth probe launched by the agency in a continuation of the Voyager series. Its purpose was to explore and further the knowledge of the outer solar system for mankind, gather information, and then return that information to the probe's creators back home on Earth. Now, once the probe had completed its initial mission, like the Voyager probes and a few others before it, it would continue on outside the boundaries of the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud, leaving the Sol system. Now, through unknown means, some theories stating that perhaps a black hole, a temporary wormhole, or other alien intervention perhaps, or even perhaps chaotic space or some other anomaly, the probe was catapulted thousands of light years across the galaxy, where it continued on its mission, gathering information and trying to transmit that information back to Earth, scanning planets and generally learning. Here, it is theorized that it encountered a machine race of unknown origin, and we'll get to the theories as to who and what they were. This race of advanced machines, whether they be fully sentient or in some way quasi-sentient, such as the Prelor, were to view the machine as kin. They saw it as like them. They understood its mission to further knowledge and gather it, and so they decided, seeing this machine, although a primitive version with primitive programming, they saw it as kin to themselves. They would help it. They would enhance its programming. They would help build a ship around it to more easily and more efficiently facilitate the mission upon which it has been sent, gather information, and then return that information back to its creator. Suddenly becoming sentient for a space probe was quite a lot of information for it to take in, or at least semi-sentient. It would become Voyager. This was because of dirt on the plate that was on the side of the probe, which spelt out Voyager. It only read Voyager, and as a result it became known as Voyager. The probe would slowly grow in size until the starship that it had begun building around itself, or had initially been built by the alien race of machines, grew to unimaginably huge sizes, surrounding itself with an energy barrier as an extension of its own self for both protection as well as harvesting up more information and other such things, samples such as Klingon battlecruisers. This energy cloud was more than 2 AUs across, and for reference, 1 AU is the orbit of Earth around the Sun. Well, the distance between Earth and the Sun. So it is a big energy cloud that of course would dissipate eventually when the probe decided that it had gathered enough information and was going to return to Earth to meet its creator and, in its mind, bond with its creator, because the one thing it lacked, other than the perfection of logic, was emotion. It needed that extra dimension of creativity, of a truly sentient organic mind to go beyond its programming and explore in new ways. Though the probe seemed dangerous, this was just cold calculated logic that it applied to its mission. it destroyed or sampled the Klingon battlecruisers because that was what it was programmed to do, not because it maliciously took offense to what the Klingons did by attacking it, or that it was threatened by them, or it felt a malevolent need to destroy them. It simply needed to catalogue and contain a new encounter, something it had not seen before. So it catalogued it. That's all. It just happens that that also killed the specimens in the form of the Klingons. As the probe approached Earth, it would steamroll through anything that was sent against it. The USS Enterprise NCC-1701A would manage to bypass its outer cloud as the cloud got smaller as it approached Earth, which did always pop into my head that maybe even further out the cloud was even larger and had slowly been contracting for even longer, so who knows how big this thing really was. Long story short, realizing that humans were its creators, it wanted to bond with one. A human, although it did replace one non-human member of the crew with a perfect copy, in denoting the incredibly advanced technology which this probe had both been given by its enhancers and what it had gathered from all of the races and mysteries that it had encountered in the universe. It would bond with Captain William Decker, the former CO of the USS Enterprise before he was temporarily made executive officer aboard his own ship by Admiral Kirk. With this bonding with Voyager, he would become part of it, and Voyager would expand to explore new horizons in time and space and dimensions in ways that no one can truly comprehend except maybe the Q. So there we have Voyager 6, the NASA probe come enhanced by aliens, come bonded with its human creators, although not specific human creators, this isn't Nomad, and going on to be something glorious. It's an underrated movie, and I think doesn't get the love sometimes that it deserves. I think motion picture is sometimes misunderstood because it is very slow, but the music in that film is epic. It is beautiful, truly beautiful, and the film, if you've got the patience to sit through, because I always sit through the director's cuts, it's long, but it's got a pace and has a really good formulated story to it. It is an underrated classic, not just in the Trek universe, but in general, in my opinion. But getting to the in-universe stuff, now there are many speculations as to who it was that enhanced them. One of the most popular ones is that it was the Borg, but I always think the Borg are too malevolent, and I think Starfleet would agree with me on that. The Borg wouldn't just send this thing out to gather up a few specimens and return them to Earth. They'd want them returned to them. If they'd assimilated the probe, it could have gathered all information, gone out on its own, but the idea that the Borg wouldn't have turned it into something else, they'd have simply absorbed it into themselves. They'd have recycled the materials, took it apart and tried to understand it and maybe track it back to its source if it was of interesting technology. But I think it was too primitive for them to want to bother assimilating. I mean, this is a race that thought the Kazon's technology was too primitive to bother assimilating. A thruster-powered probe with radio communications technology and basic computers to the Borg would have been so unbelievably, even to the Borg of the 20th century, that kind of technology would be so unbelievably primitive that they probably wouldn't even have bothered to scan it again. They'd have just ignored it. Another theory I quite like, I've heard, is that in Star Trek Picard we learn about an ancient race of machines who are very dangerous, that it could have been them that found the probe and sent it back. I don't know if I personally subscribe to it. One I simply subscribe to is, who knows? Not everything has to have an answer that we know and understand. The race that did this might transcend time and space. They might be extinct. Or, hear me out, Starfleet simply doesn't know them. Voyager, we don't know how fast it was. We know it was definitely warp capable in some way. It had some kind of FTL. Probably some kind of warp, considering the universe it was in. But how fast was Voyager? Was it warp 2? Warp 5? Warp 9? Warp 10? Was it transwarp? What was it? Did it have slipstream drive? Coaxial warp? Did it use subspace catapults? I mean, the list goes on. So, did it use a mycelial network? The point is, we don't know. And I think that is the mystery. I think if it's ever explained, which it has been explained in out of beta canon sources, but not in alpha canon, and I'm sticking to alpha canon. So fan theories are great to speculate, but we simply don't know. There's nothing concrete. There's nothing familiar enough about the technology to point it in a direction of any one specific known quantifiable species. And on top of that, you've got layers of probably hundreds of different species that this thing has sampled along the way, much like the Borg, assimilating different pieces of technology into itself, enhancing itself even further to the point where beyond the Voyager probe itself, the original technology has become completely unrecognizable. So anyway, there we have Voyager 6, Voyager, beginning to end, and a bit of speculation at the back end of the video. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, and if you made it all the way to the end, thank you for watching, and bye bye.